The movie begins by introducing us to Nick, a 28-year-old writer who has recently moved to Washington for work. While searching for a place to stay, he visits the house of Mr. and Mrs. Forrester to check out a guest house on their property. Mrs. Forrester shows him around, and Nick instantly likes it. He decides to move in. Soon, we meet their 14-year-old daughter, Adrian. When Nick moves in, Adrian and her friends secretly watch him from below the house. It's clear that Adrian is intrigued by Nick. She even sends her friend Cheyenne to go talk to him. After meeting Nick, Cheyenne returns and tells Adrian that Nick is really handsome. The next day, Nick goes to work, where his boss assigns him to write an article on a criminal named The Robot. He's also told to collaborate with Amy, who, as it turns out, is Nick's girlfriend. Later, while Nick is cleaning his car, Adrian shows up and the two strike up a conversation. They seem to get along well and develop a friendly bond. That night, as Nick works on the article, Adrian drops by again. She begins to flirt with him. Nick tells her about the article and explains who the robot is, a notorious criminal. Adrian already knows about him and listens with curiosity before heading home. The next day, as Nick is taking a shower, Adrian comes over again. She finds one of his childhood photos and asks if she can keep it. Nick says no, explaining that it's the only copy he has. Adrian then invites him to a party at her house and leaves. Later, Nick takes his article to the office. Before submitting it, he reads it over and realizes that several parts have been changed, changes he didn't make. When he shows the article to his boss, the boss is very impressed and praises the work. Nick is surprised but says nothing for the moment. That night, Nick attends the party at Adrian's house. He finds her playing the piano beautifully. When they talk, Adrian confesses that she was the one who edited his article. Nick is annoyed at first, but she insists that she was only trying to help. Then, she takes him to a nearby lighthouse, a place she loves. As they sit and talk, Adrian suddenly kisses Nick. Initially stunned, Nick gently stops her and takes her back home. The next day, while Nick is spending time with Amy, Adrian shows up again. Nick introduces Adrian to Amy, and seeing them together makes Adrian feel uneasy. During a party with Nick's office colleagues, Adrian interacts with Amy. From their conversation, Amy quickly realizes that Adrian has a crush on Nick. Later, Amy tells Nick about it, but Nick doesn't take it seriously. He simply thinks it's just a phase of teenage infatuation. While working at home one day, Nick realizes that his childhood photo is missing. He searches the entire house but can't find it. That's when he remembers that Adrian had once shown interest in that very photo. Suspicious, he heads over to Adrian's house. Finding her alone at home, Nick ends up walking into her room looking for the photo. He doesn't find it there either. Suddenly, Adrian comes out of the bathroom and hearing her, Nick hides inside her closet. Adrian notices something odd and quickly figures out that Nick is inside the closet. Instead of reacting, she deliberately starts changing her clothes in front of the closet, knowing Nick is inside. Once Adrian leaves the room, Nick quietly sneaks out, but as he opens the front door, he runs into Adrian's father. Surprised to see Nick, her dad asks what he's doing there. Nick quickly makes up a story saying he came to return a book he borrowed from Adrian. Her father then takes him upstairs and shows him an old childhood swing he is restoring. At that moment, Adrian arrives. Her dad asks her which book she gave to Nick. Realizing Nick lied to avoid suspicion, Adrian plays along and names a random book. This makes Nick realize just how deeply Adrian feels about him. The next day, Nick finds Adrian alone and decides to have a serious conversation. He tells her, "We can never be in a relationship. You're only 14 and I'm 28. It's not right." Adrian listens calmly, but then looks at him seductively and brings up the kiss at the lighthouse. She also accuses him of secretly watching her change. "If you don't love me, why did you kiss me? Why were you watching me change?" she asks. Nick has no answer and silently walks away. The next day, he brings Amy over to show her his renovated car. But when he removes the car cover, he's shocked to see an obscene word scratched onto the hood. Furious, he suspects Adrian did it and goes to her house to complain to her father. However, when her dad asks Adrian about it, she completely denies it. Nick has no proof, so he can't do anything and starts covering the graffiti. Just then, Adrian's friend Cheyenne arrives. Cheyenne, Adrian's friend, wanted to tell Nick something important about her. She called him to a secret location for a private talk. However, Adrian spotted them together and assumed the worst. Later, while horse riding with Cheyenne, Adrian intentionally messes with Cheyenne's horse, causing her to fall and break her leg. Meanwhile, Nick had been waiting at the meeting spot, unaware of what happened to Cheyenne. When she doesn't show up, he decides to leave. But just then, he runs into Adrian, who tells him about the accident. A few days later, Nick submits his interview on the criminal robot at his office. But when he checks the file, he discovers it's been deleted. Shocked, he rushes home to check his computer, only to find that his system has been wiped clean. Realizing someone has deliberately tampered with it, he suspects Adrian. Furious, Nick decides to move out. While packing, he discovers a secret room in the house. Inside, he finds lit candles and his own photos placed beneath them. Clearly a disturbing shrine. Alarmed, he seals the room shut and changes the house locks to keep Adrian out. He begins working on recreating the lost interview. During this time, Adrian repeatedly calls and messages him, but Nick ignores her, which enrages her even more. Later, Nick and Amy spend the night together, not realizing Adrian is secretly watching them. Enraged by what she sees, Adrian begins plotting. The next morning, Amy finds Adrian near her car and tries to talk to her. She calmly tells Adrian that she's not really in love with Nick, it's just attraction. Someday, when you're older, you'll find someone who's right for you, Amy says, before walking away. But Adrian isn't done. She follows Amy, and while Amy is developing a photo in the darkroom, Adrian locks her inside and releases a swarm of bees. Amy gets stung multiple times, eventually fainting after managing to open a window. When Nick finds out, he's horrified. Around the same time, Adrian shows up at his place and invites him to her horse riding competition. But Nick doesn't attend. He's busy at a work event. Feeling ignored, Adrian loses control and storms into the event. In front of everyone, she slaps Nick. Shocked, people stare, and Nick quickly pulls her aside. He gives her a firm warning and tells her to go home immediately. After the incident, Nick visits his new landlord to finalize a rental, but the landlord refuses to rent to him anymore. Adrian had falsely told them that Nick was a drug dealer. When Nick returns home, he finds several police officers waiting for him. Adrian and her father are also there, and Adrian is crying. Her emotional act convinces her father that Nick has done something terrible, and he attempts to attack him. In truth, Adrian had filed a false report against Nick, accusing him of inappropriate behavior with a minor. The police take Nick to the station. Despite his attempts to explain, the officer informs him that forensic evidence was found on Adrian's body. It turns out, the night Nick was intimate with Amy, Adrian had entered the house and retrieved the used protection from the trash, planting false evidence against him. Nick realizes he's been framed, but fortunately, his boss believes in his innocence and posts bail for him. Back home, Nick begins packing up to leave when Cheyenne, Adrian's friend, visits and tells him something shocking. She explains that Adrian had once fallen hard for another boy, who rejected her, and shortly afterward, that boy mysteriously died from poisoning. Cheyenne suspects Adrian was behind it. She also tells Nick that Adrian keeps a diary where she writes everything. If they can get their hands on it, it might prove his innocence. However, Nick, mentally exhausted, tells her to leave and doesn't want to pursue it. But Cheyenne doesn't give up. Instead of going home, she sneaks into Adrian's house. A short time later, Nick hears screams coming from the house. He rushes over and is greeted by Adrian, who confesses her love for him. Nick ignores her and starts looking for Cheyenne. Feeling rejected, Adrian attacks him from behind and Nick tumbles down the stairs. Just then, Adrian's father enters. Adrian and Nick rush into the room where her father was restoring an old swing. Nick finds Cheyenne tied up inside. Before he can act, Adrian hits him again, leading to a scuffle between them. When her father sees them fighting, he assumes the worst and starts hitting Nick. But Adrian suddenly turns on her own father and knocks him unconscious. Nick then knocks Adrian out with a punch and frees Cheyenne. We then see Adrian in a mental hospital, writing an apology letter to Nick. Meanwhile, Nick is back with Amy, and they receive a series of letters from Adrian. At the end of the movie, Adrian is seen holding a photo of her doctor and his wife, staring at the doctor with deep interest, hinting that she may be developing feelings for him. And this is where the movie ends.